Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My dad works for a company that handles fire alarm systems for hotels and restaurants. One of his clients is this nice hotel where the owner became friends with our family over the years. Because of this friendship, I get to use their pool for free along with my girlfriend and up to 2 friends, even when we're not staying at the hotel. It was scorching hot that day, hitting over 30 degrees Celsius from 9 a.m. until 9 p.m. I decided to take advantage of the pool access and invited my girlfriend and 2 best friends to come with me. I called the owner first to let him know we were coming, and he told me it was totally fine and we could show up whenever we wanted. We arrived around 2 p.m. when the heat was at its worst, but that's also when the pool feels most amazing since the water stays nice and warm. The pool area wasn't crowded at all. They have 2 separate pools, a shallow kids pool that's about 3 feet deep and an adult pool that starts at 8 feet and goes down to 13 feet in the center. It's pretty deep but really refreshing. When we got to the adult pool, there was only one woman swimming. She left about 5 minutes after we arrived, so we had the whole pool to ourselves. We set up our stuff on some chairs, and I went to the pool bar to grab sodas and sandwiches for everyone. After we ate some of the food and drank some of the sodas, we headed into the pool. We were being totally respectful. No jumping, no yelling, no splashing around. We just walked in through the shallow end and used the ladder. The kids' pool only had one child in it, and that kid belonged to the woman who had already left. So basically, we had both pools to ourselves. We'd been swimming peacefully for maybe 5 minutes when this woman and her kid showed up. Karen walked up to the edge of the pool and asked us to get out. I was confused and asked her what the problem was, since we weren't doing anything wrong. She told me we were taking up too much space and her precious child couldn't swim because of us. I looked around confused. Her precious child was maybe 7 years old, and he shouldn't even be in the adult pool anyway. Plus, this pool is massive, about 98 by 164 feet. There was more than enough room for everyone. I tried to explain to her that there was plenty of space and that her son should actually be in the kids' pool since this one was too deep for children. She started yelling at me, demanding that we leave immediately. Then her kid joined in, telling us to leave and claiming that this was their pool because the owner was his father. I almost laughed out loud when the kid said that. I know the owner and his family personally, and these people definitely aren't them. I told her that I knew the owner, and they weren't his family. Karen completely lost it. She bent down to the edge of the pool and threw water at me like some kind of toddler having a tantrum. My hair got wet since I hadn't gone underwater yet. She laughed and asked if I was mad about getting wet. I just stared at her. We were literally standing in a pool full of water, and she was acting like splashing me was some kind of genius move. She yelled at us again to get out, but I told her no thanks and that I liked it where I was. She threatened to report us to the lifeguard and walked over to him. Karen went to the lifeguard and started telling him some made-up story about how we were causing trouble. The lifeguard had been watching the whole thing happen. He came over to us and whispered quietly so she couldn't hear that he would take care of her because he heard what really happened. Karen was standing far away thinking she'd won. The lifeguard walked back over to her and told her we hadn't done anything wrong, and there was plenty of space for everyone. He also reminded her that her child couldn't be in the adult pool. She screamed that her kid was the best swimmer there and could be wherever he wanted. When she realized the lifeguard wasn't going to kick us out, she got desperate and started screaming that he was hitting her and demanding to see the manager. The bar employee came running over. Turns out he was in charge of the pool area that day. Karen immediately told him that I had hit her. All of us, me, my girlfriend, my 2 friends, and the bar employee, told her that wasn't true. She called us all liars and said we would all go to jail. Then she looked at us and demanded that we give her our food and drinks as compensation for being rude to her. I told her that would only happen in her dreams. She yelled at me to respect my elders. The bar employee had already called the owner, who showed up pretty quickly. Karen immediately told him that we had hit her and her child. Her kid backed up her lie. The owner told her that wasn't true because he had seen everything on the security cameras. He also pointed out that she and her son weren't hotel guests and hadn't paid at the gate. They had just slipped through without permission. When Karen heard about the cameras, she grabbed her kid and took off without another word. The owner apologized to us and told the bar employee to bring us another set of sandwiches for free. We swam for another 15 minutes, then got out and finished all our food. After we changed back into our regular clothes and packed up our stuff, we thanked the owner and bar employee and headed to the parking lot. I called my mom to come pick us up. We saw Karen waiting by the cars. She yelled at us, accusing us of stealing her things and lying about everything. She demanded that we give her stuff back and tried to grab the bag I was carrying, which had all our towels, swimsuits, and personal belongings. Since I work out regularly, I'm stronger than her and didn't let her take it. She started screaming again that I was hitting her and threatened to call the police, not realizing the parking lot also had security cameras. My girlfriend had gone to get the owner without me noticing. The owner came running over and told Karen that he was the one calling the police for lying and harassment. He told us kids to go and that he would take care of her. We walked to the other end of the parking lot where my mom was waiting in the car. She hadn't heard any of the commotion. We got in and drove to my house where we hung out for a while before my friends went home. Later that day, my dad had a scheduled meeting with the owner to discuss upgrading the hotel's fire alarm system. The owner told him everything that had happened after we left. When my dad got home, he explained that the owner had called the police after we left. When the officers arrived, they checked Karen's identification and gave her a breathalyzer test. She ended up getting arrested for multiple charges: fleeing a crime scene, drug distribution, public intoxication with a blood alcohol level of 0.10%, and several other things my dad didn't bother remembering all the details of. Turns out Karen wasn't just entitled, she was drunk and apparently had drugs on her. The owner pressed charges for harassment and trespassing too. So what started with her trying to kick us out of a pool ended with her spending the night in jail and facing serious legal problems. We still go to that pool sometimes, and the owner always asks how we're doing. He jokes that we brought him the most excitement his hotel had seen in years. I've been coaching youth sports for 8 years now, and the stories about crazy parents are all true. In fact, they're usually worse than what you hear. I work in one of those competitive leagues where parents are already picking out college jerseys for kids who can barely tie their own cleats. Most of these kids are completely average players. That's just how averages work. But their parents don't see it that way. Half my team consists of kids who were pushed into the sport by mom and dad, so they don't have the same passion as the kids who actually want to be there. It makes coaching a real challenge because you never know who's genuinely motivated and who's just going through the motions to keep their parents happy. I'm a sophomore team coach, so these kids are around 15 or 16 years old. Most of them are still figuring out if they even like the sport, let alone if they want to pursue it seriously. But their parents? They're already planning recruitment videos and calculating scholarship opportunities. This particular story involves one of my players who's probably the sweetest kid on the team, but also the clumsiest. He gets along great with his teammates and never causes any drama, but he's pretty indifferent to actually playing. He shows up, does what he's told, and seems just as happy sitting on the bench as being on the field. Honestly, I prefer kids like him sometimes because they don't argue with my decisions or try to play through injuries to prove themselves. About 4 months ago, this kid suffered a serious rotator cuff injury during practice. It was one of those injuries that makes you wince just watching it happen. The team doctor took one look at him and immediately recommended surgery. The kid took it surprisingly well. No tears, no arguments, just a resigned nod like he'd been expecting something like this to happen eventually. After his surgery, his parents insisted he keep coming to practice even though he obviously couldn't participate. He'd sit on the sidelines with his arm in a sling, sometimes doing homework, sometimes just watching his teammates. Occasionally, he'd play games on his phone. The important thing was that he never once complained about not being able to play or asked when he could get back on the field. That's exactly what you want from a player recovering from a serious injury: patience. I was actually proud of how he was handling his recovery. Too many of my dedicated players try to rush back before they're ready and end up making their injuries worse. This kid seemed content to take his time and heal properly. Then, less than 3 weeks after his surgery, his mother showed up to practice with a big smile on her face. She announced that her son was cleared to play and could start again that very day. She even suggested that maybe someone should work with him one-on-one to help him catch up with what he'd missed. I was genuinely surprised. 3 weeks seemed incredibly fast for a rotator cuff surgery recovery, but I'm not a doctor. If his medical team had cleared him, then he was cleared. However, we have strict protocols about medical clearances. I told her that was great news, but I'd need to see the official letter from his doctor's office for our team files before we could get him started with some light exercises. The change in her expression was immediate. She looked like I'd just asked her to solve calculus in her head. She stammered that she didn't have the letter with her and asked who carries that stuff around anyway. I figured she'd just forgotten to bring it, which happens all the time with parents. They get excited about good news and rush over without thinking about paperwork. I told her it was no problem. Her son could hang out with us while she ran home and emailed or faxed the letter to me. She started stuttering and looking around like she was searching for an escape route. She said she didn't have time to go all the way home because she had another appointment. That's when I started paying attention to her son's body language. Throughout this entire conversation, he'd been standing there looking uncomfortable. His good arm was crossed over his body protectively, and he kept looking between his mother and me like he wished he could disappear. Most importantly, he didn't look excited about returning to practice at all. Even for a kid who's indifferent to the sport, I would have expected some happiness about getting back with his teammates after sitting out for weeks. Something felt off. In most cases, I might have agreed to wait until the next day to see the documentation, especially since I always start returning players with very light exercises anyway. But my gut was telling me to be extra careful here. I suggested that I could just call his doctor's office right then and have them send the letter directly to us. I mentioned it was still early in the day, so we should be able to reach them. I pulled out my phone and stood there expectantly waiting for her to give me the doctor's contact information. She gasped like I'd suggested something outrageous and started stuttering again. Then she blurted out that he wasn't being treated by a Western big pharma doctor, he was on an essential oil regimen instead. I honestly didn't know whether to laugh or start yelling. The idea that someone would try to treat a serious internal injury with essential oils was so ridiculous, it seemed like a joke. But the fact that she was willing to risk her son's health just to get him back on the field a few weeks early made me furious. I couldn't tell if she genuinely believed that essential oils had healed his shoulder, which still obviously looked painful to him, or if she was just making up excuses because no real doctor had actually cleared him yet. I was completely stuck. This was way beyond my expertise, so I called over another coach and asked if I could talk to her privately for a minute. I explained everything that had just happened, and she came up with a brilliant solution. She suggested I tell the mother that our team physician could do a routine post-surgery exam right then and write a clearance letter. It was a perfect bluff. We do have a team physician, but you need to schedule appointments with him at least a week in advance. Still, if she called my bluff, I was prepared to make some phone calls and figure something out. I walked back over to the mother with renewed confidence and told her I had good news. I explained that I just talked with other staff members and our team physician could do a routine post-surgery exam right away and write the clearance letter. She immediately said she wasn't comfortable with him seeing a strange doctor. I reminded her that this was our team physician who had treated her son for injuries before. He wasn't a stranger at all. She immediately changed tactics and said she didn't trust Western medicine. She insisted they wanted to maintain the essential oil treatment plan. Then she started ranting about how all these scans were going to give him radiation poisoning. She went off on this whole speech about the dangers of modern medicine and the healing power of natural remedies. Meanwhile, her son was standing behind her, mouthing apologies to me. That's when I knew for certain that I was doing the right thing. The kid clearly had nothing to do with this scheme to rush him back onto the field. I told her I was sorry, but I couldn't help her with that. I explained that her son needed proper medical clearance before he could return to practice. She absolutely lost it. She started screaming at me, calling me names, and even yelling at some of my other players who were walking past. Her tantrum was so loud and disruptive that someone from the marching band practice on the other field came over and asked her to leave because they literally couldn't hear their instruments over her screaming. The next day, both the principal and the head of athletics received letters from a law firm. The letters accused the school of discriminating against her son and preventing him from playing because of the family's belief in alternative medicine. Let me be clear about something. A rotator cuff injury is extremely serious, especially for a teenager. If he didn't recover properly, he could face a lifetime of chronic pain. We're not just talking about never playing sports again. He might never be able to lift anything heavy or even hold certain positions without excruciating pain. If he re-injured himself by playing contact sports while his shoulder was still healing, he could have permanent mobility problems. This wasn't about me having a power struggle with a parent or disagreeing with their healthcare choices. This was about my players' physical safety, and I was absolutely willing to fight for that no matter what it cost me. I was prepared to hire my own lawyer and pay for it out of my own pocket if necessary. I couldn't really afford it, but I didn't care. Some things are more important than money. The principal showed the threatening letter to his lawyer's wife, who suggested we just ignore it and see if the mother would get tired of spending time and money on the situation. She was not going down that easily. The following week, she showed up to practice with her lawyer in person. He tried to lecture me about how public school teams couldn't prevent students from participating based on their family's personal beliefs. He insisted that every child had a right to participate in public school activities. I'm not a lawyer, but this was easy even for me. I told him this was a tryout team where no one was guaranteed participation, and I could cut players for any reason I saw fit. That shut him up pretty quickly. I think he probably told the mother that she was out of legal options, but she must have kept paying him because he kept sending us threatening letters. Since you never know how far someone like this is willing to take things, I decided to consult with my own attorney. I gave her all the documents to review, and after she finished laughing, she told me not to worry about it unless I was actually served with papers to appear in court. 6 weeks later, I was back in her office. The mother was bringing the school into a civil lawsuit, and I had been called to testify. My lawyer was honest with me. She said the school district would probably provide legal counsel for me, so I shouldn't pay her anything yet. She was right. Suddenly, I was in these intense strategy meetings with people I'd never met before. Team boosters, top administrators whose names I'd only heard in passing, and various other officials who I can barely remember because the whole thing was such a stressful blur. This was getting very serious very quickly. Multiple times, different people pulled me aside and asked if I couldn't just clear the kid to play and make this whole problem go away. Every single time, my answer was the same. Absolutely not. When we got closer to the court date, the school's legal team started seriously discussing just paying these people off and settling out of court if they agreed to drop the lawsuit and walk away from the sport entirely. No one wanted to hear my explanations about why that would never work and would just encourage more parents to try the same tactics. I was leaving one of these strategy meetings when I saw the kid waiting outside my office. I knew I wasn't supposed to talk to any of them because of the ongoing lawsuit, but this kid had been really respectful throughout the whole mess, and he obviously wanted nothing to do with his mother's behavior. I approached him cautiously, and before I could say anything, he dragged his father out from around the corner. His dad looked terrified, like his wife might jump out of the shadows at any moment, but his son was determined. The kid told his father to do it, and that they should get going. The dad nervously asked if I could have his son cleared by a team physician. I nodded, and the dad hesitated, but his son was clearly fed up with the entire situation. He told his father they should get going and that he should sign whatever needed to be signed so he could see whoever he needed to see. I think the kid was embarrassed about being known as the player who was suing his own team. Everyone at school knew what was happening because parents talk, and it had become a pretty big story in our small community. The dad kept looking around nervously and speaking quietly so his son couldn't hear him. He said that if his wife ever found out about this, there would be hell to pay. He begged me not to make a big scene about it and to just say the kid was cleared to play without advertising how it happened. I assured him that I would never share a student's private medical information with anyone, and that I was legally prohibited from doing so anyway. I sent an urgent message to our team doctor, and by the end of the day, our very relieved legal team was able to call the mother and tell her that her son had been cleared to return to practice. Here's the thing though, I didn't rush his paperwork through some back channel just to end the lawsuit. The mother had dragged this whole ordeal out for so long that her son had actually fully healed. Our doctor was able to pass him with flying colors because he was genuinely ready to play again. The legal team confirmed last week that I'm completely free of all the legal drama, which is why I can finally tell this story. I don't want to embarrass the kid in our small community, but I definitely needed to vent about this somewhere. This mother still isn't the worst parent I've dealt with in terms of pure hostility. I've had parents scream at me over playing time, game schedules, and even their kid's uniform number. But she's definitely the worst in terms of putting her child's physical safety at risk just to get what she wanted. That's why this will always be my #1 worst parent experience. The kid is doing fine now, by the way. His shoulder healed completely, and he's back to his usual routine of showing up to practice, doing what he's told, and being perfectly content whether he's playing or sitting on the bench. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.